Unfortunately, we all do inappropriate things sometimes and make decisions that we later regret. And it's great when we get the opportunity to fix everything, but it's not always the case. So today's story is about how pride and arrogance can ruin one's life, and how important it is to always, under any life circumstances, remain human. Aron was sitting in a chair, immersed in his own thoughts. Suddenly, he heard a knock on his door. The man looked at his watch, and he was very surprised. Who could it be? The man was sort of a hermit, who didn't really have any friends, barely ever got any guests, and never went to visit anyone himself. "Who's there?" the man asked unkindly. In response, he heard a woman say, "Hello, my name is Kate, and I need to talk to you." "I don't know you, so we don't have anything to talk about," Aron answered rudely. "Sir, I came a long way to see you, and if you don't let me in, I'll have to spend the night in my car in front of your house." The woman continued to insist. "Sleep wherever you want, I don't care," Aron answered and was about to go back to his chair. "It's about April," he heard the woman's voice again. Aron didn't expect to hear that name. The man froze in place. His face changed and his heart seemed to be jumping out of his chest. Aron opened the door. "What do you want?" "Maybe you could invite me inside? It's cold out here." Aron looked the woman over from head to toe, sighed heavily, and reluctantly pointed her in the direction of the kitchen. Looking at the stranger, trembling from the cold, Aron made the tea for his guest and sat opposite her. "Maybe you could finally tell me why you came here. I know it's been 10 years, but I'm sure you haven't forgotten April. I'm here at the request of her mother, Mrs. Jackson." All these 10 years, Aron tried very hard to forget that chapter of his life, but it didn't seem to be possible. Aron came to the big city from a small village. The young man rented a house and got a job at a factory. There was barely enough money for rent and food, so Aron also got a part-time job as a security guard at a warehouse. Aron worked very hard and was always very tired, but his financial situation improved. The young man got a lot of attention from women. He was good-looking, and he always had something to talk to them about. The man read a lot, which allowed him to discuss all kinds of things. However, he never had any serious relationships with any of those women. One day, he nearly got hit by a car. The man got a scare and thus was very angry. The frightened woman driver ran up to the man. "Please forgive me. Are you okay? It's my 3rd day driving. Do you need to go to the hospital?" "No, I'm fine." Aron was no longer angry. The young woman won the man's heart at first sight. "How can I make it up to you?" she asked guiltily. "Well, the best way to make it up to me would be to go on a date with me." She was taken aback by the man's forwardness, but feeling guilty over what she did, she couldn't say no. "Well, that was unexpected. Fine, I'll go on a date with you, but just this once. Give me the place and the time." The woman was clearly irritated. They met in a cafe that same evening. The young woman's name was April. Slowly but surely, the young people started a conversation. April came from a very wealthy family. Her father was the owner of a chain of restaurants in the city. She worked as a manager at one of them. "My father set me a probationary period of 3 years. If I do well, I'll get to own that restaurant. If I don't do well, I'll be washing floors there for an entire year," the young woman said. "Yeah, right. You're gonna wash the floors," Aron grinned. "No, that's true. My dad believes that everything needs to be achieved through hard work and perseverance. So that's the deal we have. I only have a couple of months left of my probationary period. I think I'm doing all right." After they were done at the cafe, the couple decided to take a walk. Aron never stopped talking. He told April stories, made jokes, and admired the young woman's ringing laughter. That night wasn't the only date, but rather their first one. The young people started dating and soon realized that they loved each other. A few months later, April started spending nights at Aron's place. Having noticed the changes in her daughter's behavior, April's mother asked her about the reason she was so happy and where she was spending her nights. The young woman had a great relationship with her mother, and therefore she told her the truth about Aron without hiding any details. Mrs. Jackson was happy for her daughter, but there were a couple things that made her feel uncomfortable. For example, the expensive gifts that April gave Aron, and the fact that he was happy to accept them. Or the fact that April offered to pay part of Aron's rent, since she often stayed at his place, and the man agreed to it. One day, April's parents asked her to introduce them to Aron. Even though the young man was very nervous, he did great at the family dinner, and made a good impression on April's parents. Mrs. Jackson never expressed her doubts about Aron to her daughter, but when she learned that Aron was planning on proposing, she told her husband what she was worried about. I suspect that Aron may be using our daughter for her money. We need to find out everything we can about him and see what kind of person he really is, Mr. Jackson suggested, after listening to his wife. So the woman came up with an idea on how to do it. Mrs. Jackson took out some old, torn clothes and dressed as a beggar. Looking in the mirror, the woman realized that even her own husband wouldn't be able to recognize her, let alone Aron. He'd only seen her a couple of times, well-groomed, elegantly dressed, with her hair and makeup done perfectly. She was waiting for Aron near the factory where he worked. Having spotted him, the woman went up to the man and begged him for alms in a low, hoarse voice. The man gave the woman a contemptuous look. "You need money? Have you tried earning it?" he replied rudely. "Unfortunately, I can't get a job because I need to take care of my bedridden mother, and my health isn't great either," the woman answered, pointing to her cane. "In that case, you and your mother probably get benefits from the state, which should be enough for you to live on." Aron continued to be rude. "We use all the money we get to buy medications. We really need help. I'm begging you. I'm not asking for much," the woman said with tears in her eyes. "I have to work hard to earn money. There are a lot of beggars just like you. If I give out my money to everyone, I'll end up just like you, begging for alms. Stopping people on the street and telling them tearful stories isn't hard. What's hard is finding a job and doing it. I know you're kind. You're just lazy." Aron noticed how the woman looked at the bag of pastries he was holding. "It also cost me money. I had to pay for it. No one gave it to me for free. Take your mother to a hospice and go to work. And now, get out of my way." Aron pushed the beggar aside and left. The woman followed him with her eyes. Her heart was aching, and there was a lump in her throat. Was this man really going to be her daughter's husband? Lowering her head, she slowly walked to her car, which was parked around the corner. Aron returned home in a bad mood. His encounter with the beggar left him with an unpleasant feeling in his soul. The man tried to think about April instead. She was supposed to come over soon. The man thought about how lucky he was to have her as a girlfriend. She was smart, beautiful, and had a restaurant. Suddenly, April called and canceled, promising him to come over the next day. When the young woman came by the next morning, Aron tried to kiss her, but she pulled away. April handed him her phone. "Here, take a listen." Aron turned on the recording and was stunned. He heard his conversation with the beggar from the day before. He looked at April in bewilderment. "That beggar was my mother. She wanted to know what kind of person you are. And now, we all do." Aron tried to justify himself, but April said that she didn't have anything to say to him. "We're done," were the last words April said. Aron thought that she would calm down in a couple of days and change her mind, but he was wrong. Soon the young man tried calling her, but she never picked up. He went over to April's house, but Miss Jackson opened the door. Aron apologized profusely, admitting that he had made a mistake. Having listened to him, Miss Jackson said, "God is your judge. April's not here. She didn't want to see you, so she left. Don't come here again." Aron continued to wait for April. He called her and tried to catch her at home. The man hoped that if he could talk to her, he'd be able to fix everything. But then something terrible happened. There was a robbery at the warehouse during Aron's shift. He got blamed for it and got sentenced to 3 years in prison. The first thing he did after his release was go see April, but Miss Jackson said that she was happily married. Aron returned to his parents' home. 2 years later, his father died, and a year later, his mother passed away too. The man was all alone. He moved away from people, didn't keep in touch with anyone, and lived his life completely alone. If anyone ever tried to make friends with him, they quickly gave up because the man was rude and uncommunicative. "So why are you here?" Aron turned to Katie. "Miss Jackson wants to apologize and is asking for you to come over." "She wants to apologize? But I'm the one who's in the wrong." Aron was surprised. "You'll get all the details from her. She wanted to come herself, but I'll just say one thing. April got in an accident and now she's bedridden. I'm her nurse, and she was never married." Having heard what happened to April, Aron flinched. "You still love her," Kate said, looking at the man. Aron covered his face with his hands and wept softly. "So I was right to come over. She needs you by her side. Let's go." Mr. and Mrs. Jackson met Aron and led him into the living room. "April's sleeping. You can see her later. We need to talk to you. Remember when I said that April left town? I knew that when she returned, she would go looking for you. So I came up with a crazy idea, and my husband supported me in it. There was no robbery at the warehouse where you worked. It was all set up. There's a lot you can do when you have money. You went to jail because of us. When you rushed to see April after your release, I had no choice but to say that she was happily married. I lied to you. We'd hoped by this time she would have forgotten you, but that never happened. No matter how hard we tried to insist that it was time for her to move on and start a family, she always walked away from the conversation. She stayed single and never let anyone into her life. The only thing that interested her was work. She devoted all of her time to it. She got into an accident 2 months ago. The doctors managed to save her life, but there's no guarantee that she'll be able to get back on her feet ever again. When we took April home, she confessed that she got into an accident because she got distracted thinking about you. She still loves you, just as much as she did back then. She doesn't want anyone but you. We realized that we'd made a terrible mistake. Please forgive us, it's all our fault. Aron didn't feel any anger or resentment. At that moment, all he thought was, thank God that April's alive. Let's leave it all in the past, the man said out loud. When he came into the room and saw April, his heart skipped a beat. It looked like you never learned to drive after all, he said gently. Seeing him, April burst into tears. What is this? I thought you were supposed to greet your fiance with a smile and not tears. Aron smiled. They got married the same week. A year and a half later, April took her first steps. And a year after that, they had a daughter.